is that Joe Burrow is coming back this week. And Jaime, I'm going to be really honest. I don't really know why. I understand how much money they paid Joe Burrow. I understand how much money they've given these wide receivers, but given the injury history of Joe Burrow and where this team sits right now, it is very hard for me to stomach them throwing him out there. Where do you sit with the Cincinnati Bengals starting Joe Burrow this week?
I feel like they probably weren't going to have a choice.
Yeah.
Because you're in this situation where he came back a couple weeks earlier than you were expecting. It's a little bit easier to shut down that franchise quarterback if this is mid-December. And you're like, all right, we're already out of it. He tells you he's ready now and they don't start him. They're going to revolt in Cincinnati. And look, they're in this spot where you can kind of squint and see, well, if they beat the Ravens on Thursday night, they're the night Thanksgiving game, and the Steelers also lose over the weekend, they're only 2 games back of the division. They might have a shot. You got Joe Burrow. I just don't think this team is good enough with or without Joe Burrow. We're not going to see, I don't think we're going to see T. Higgins in Thursday's game either. But really the most important thing is it's not like they've gotten horrible quarterback play since they traded for Flacco. Obviously, Joe Burrow is a better quarterback than Joe Flacco,
for sure.
But their issues is they have arguably the worst defense in football. They have the worst linebacking group in football. They have issues all over that defensive field, whether it's, up front. Their second level is obviously clearly the worst, and then even in the secondary, they have plenty of issues. I just don't think it's going to make a difference, but I get where they are, where you're kind of in a tough spot here of if you don't play him, you're telling the locker room you've completely given up on your season. And then that becomes a really interesting issue, especially if you expect Zach Taylor and company to come back and lead this team next season. So to me, this is more of this is the only thing that could probably keep that locker room together now. And I mean, because think about it, if those guys in that room knew that Joe Burrow could play and didn't, what's Jamar Chase thinking?
Yeah.
What are the rest of those guys thinking?
For sure.
That would spell the complete end for this regime from general
100%.
manager to head coach on down. And I don't, even though I know Bengals fans probably would like a change, I actually don't think we're going to see much change on the personnel side of this Bengals team this coming off season. So they felt like they kind of had to do it. But if he gets hurt on Thursday, then you know what the narrative is going to be.
100%.
And look, we have to be realistic. I loved watching Joe Burrow. He's a fantastic player. Obviously, he's an elite player when he's on the field. But he has a prolonged injury history in the NFL now that at least has to be acknowledged. And I understand that there's a fine line in defining what's player fault, what is a situation fault, and what's just bad luck. And I understand that. But there are guys that have had fewer injuries and fewer severe injuries that were labeled injury prone more than Joe Burrow has
100%.
been. So I understand there's a risk here that if he suffers a bigger injury or suffers a re-injury to that toe, there's just going to be a lot of people that throw their hands up saying, how could you put your franchise quarterback in that situation? So I feel like this is kind of a no-win situation for them. But if I were Zach Taylor, I would feel like I'd have to put my best team out there and I'd have to play Joe Burrow. So I'm not going to blame them for bringing him back, even if at the end, I don't think it's going to make a difference in them making the playoffs or not.
Yeah, it's hard for me to stomach when you see Joe Flacco put up 450 yards, they score 4 touchdowns, they put up 45 points against the Bears, and then they just can't make one stop, right? There's not any much more that you could have seen from Joe Burrow, and it's not that Joe Flacco and Joe Burrow are on the same level. It's that offensively, that's not your problem, and that's not the reason why you continue to lose games. And so when that side of the football isn't your problem and you're already playing at a very high caliber level, I understand you want to get Joe Burrow in there. It's just really, given how injury prone, and I'm going to say it, injury prone he is at this juncture, it's very hard for me to justify that they're putting him out there. I get everything you said, I agree with you. I get the position that Zach Taylor is in. The unfortunate part here is I feel like Joe Burrow really pushed himself to get back, and if anybody in this division had played if there was any team that had 7 wins or 8 wins, right? It's because the division is still not technically out of sight because the Steelers and the Ravens have both not been very good. And so now you've got this opportunity to potentially still make it in. I just don't see that happening, and I hope on God that nothing happens to Joe Burrow, because it's just been we've missed a lot of the guy that we got to see go play in a Super Bowl. I mean, it's just at some point we're going to have to acknowledge that you're going to have to protect him. You're going to have to protect him from himself. He holds onto the ball a lot. That's caused a lot of the injuries throughout this time period, and they can't run the football, which has also created a problem, and this defense can't stop a nosebleed. So I think when we're looking at Joe, I understand why they're putting him out here. I'm having a tough time justifying that he is going to be playing on Thursday night. But listen, if they go out and they beat the Ravens and they put Lamar Jackson on ice, which maybe with Lamar's injury and the fact that he hasn't been as good, maybe this is an opportunity. And then guess what? I'll come back and say, Joe Shiesty, I was wrong. You were right to go back in and play, and we can all maybe sing Kumbaya and watch them into a postseason again.
And for those who think we're being unfair, I mean, like, I looked it up just to make sure to talk about the injury history and being unfair with the injury prone thing. And again, it's one of those things where, he had a major wrist injury in college that caused him to miss part of the season before he had his monster year.
Yep.
You had in 2020 the ACL, MCL, PCL meniscus tear in the leg. He's had some various knee sprains. He had an MCL injury in the Super Bowl. I know he didn't miss time because it was in the Super Bowl, but he got an MCL injury there. He had the wrist problem in 2023 where he missed the entire end of the season, and now you have that turf toe. And again, I'm not blaming him. I'm not trying to draw a narrative that he's doing something wrong. I'm just saying you have to acknowledge that this is a guy that has had 3 major NFL injuries where he has missed either a handful of weeks or the entire rest of a season or most of a season, or in some cases an entire season.
Yep.
And he also had another injury in the Super Bowl, which probably would have been a multi-week injury if that would have happened in a game where there were still games to be played later.
Yep.
And yes, there's issues with the offensive line, but guess what? Those are still issues. That hasn't been fixed over this period of time.
No, it has not.
So when we say that, I don't say that to take a shot at Joe Burrow. I'm just saying he has been a guy that's been hurt a lot for whatever reason, and the situations around him has not changed. So it is a little bit of a concern. And for those of you that have not had or know somebody that's had turf toe, I say it's the least threatening injury sounding wise that is the most severe.
100%.
It is actually one of the more severe injuries you can get. It just doesn't sound like it's that bad because you hear turf toe.
Yeah.
Like it is a bad injury to get for an
100%. The turf toe, so, Liz Frank, the two injuries that you don't want to have. Hear Liz Frank. Yeah, and they just don't sound like you tear an ACL and it's like, oh, he tore his ACL. Like, no, first of all, if anybody has ever been to the grocery store and you've dropped a can on your toe, you understand how damn hard it is because you can't walk and you just dropped a can on your toe. You have to understand it's your balance, your coordination. And when you're a quarterback and your plant foot, your toe, you can't plant your foot to turn. Like this is what happens. Like turf toe is a very serious injury that I think it's because the word turf's in front of it and people assume toe and they assume not a large injury. I don't know why.
Foot injuries in general are underrated. They are very, like, I ask right now, where's Joe Mixon been this year?
Thank you.
Oh, by the way, a foot injury. And it's Thanksgiving.
And we haven't heard or seen it.
This year. Like, I know we know, like, oh, wow, Achilles bad. Oh, yeah, ACL is bad. We know that. But, like, foot injuries are bad. They linger. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you're never quite the same.
Correct.
Ask any NFL player who's had a Liz Frank injury what the rest of their NFL career maintenance was just to avoid re-aggravating that. Mm-hmm. So, again, I say this all to say, I understand why they're doing it. If I was the head coach, I probably would feel like I have to do it too. But it does make me a little nervous because I really 100%. Don't think they're that close to getting back into the playoff conversation.
No, and I will knock on wood for you Bengals fans because good God almighty, it will be a disaster if something happens to Joe Burrow after being pushed back in here with the turf toe injury.